Hey everybody, it's Mr. Eisens here, and we're gonna go over the characteristics of life notes and just kind of highlight some of the important things that you are definitely gonna wind up seeing on your test, things to remember, stuff like that. So let's get into it. Here we go. So one of the first characteristics of life, and I believe we're gonna have 7 of them as we flip through these slides, is all things got to have cells. Okay, we're going to have a whole unit on cells, so don't worry. We're going to learn all about them, all their um, organelles, everything that's inside those cells and how they operate, how they function. All right, so, but basically all you need to know about cells is that they're like little blocks that work together, and especially in multicellular organisms like us, they're like a team. They keep each other alive, and so in multicellular organisms, it's a lot of cells that specialize and do different things so that an organism can live in a certain environment, or they can be single-celled, okay, like bacteria, all right, where they just do everything for themselves and just try to produce as much as possible. So the most important thing about cells is there are going to be 2 major types, okay, outside of just one cell versus, many multicellular. There's going to be our prokaryotic, okay, and eukaryotic. Okay, so the best way I like to remember these is prokaryotic are going to be bacteria. They're not going to have a nucleus, whereas eukaryotic, that's going to be like us. They're going to have a nucleus. They're going to be more organized, and they're going to do way more complex things. All right, we're going to look a little bit more into multicellular versus unicellular, but prokaryotic organisms are usually unicellular. Whereas multicellular organisms, they need more organization, and so they wind up having a nucleus, and that is why they're eukaryotic. Okay, the nucleus just organizes all their DNA, and we're going to talk about DNA on the next slide right here. So DNA is going to be deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, and that is what DNA stands for, but it is the genetic material that's inside all cells. Okay, so all cells have DNA. Every cell in our bodies has DNA. Bacteria has DNA. And what this allows the cells to do is basically pass on information. And so basically the DNA that you have is unique to you, because the DNA that you have makes up exactly who you are. There definitely is your experiences, environment play a role as well. But as far as your physical characteristics, it's going to be all about your DNA, and you wind up getting your DNA passed down from generation to generation. So you get your DNA half from your mom, half from your dad. And we're going to talk more about that. We got a whole unit on genetics. And that's going to be discussing genetic material. All right. So you got to have DNA and you got to have a cell. All right. That's our first 2 things. Our next one's going to be reproduction. All right. If you never reproduce, then when you die, I mean, it's all over for your species, for whatever you are. Okay. How would we know about certain bacteria or animals if they only lived one time? All right. And so, because they don't survive, they're not able to survive long term. And so you're going to need to be able to reproduce. Again, we'll talk about this more in depth in our genetics unit. But using your DNA to pass it down to your offspring, and then doing that in either an asexual fashion or sexual fashion. Basically, asexual just means it's going to be one parent, okay, passes down and makes identical copies, as you can see in this picture right here. This bacteria, all they do is they just split and they make new bacteria that are exactly the same, unless there's a mutation or 2. Whereas in sexual reproduction, it takes 2 parents, and they're going to each pass down some DNA. All right, so you got to be able to, got to have cells, got to have DNA, and then you got to be able to reproduce. So they kind of all go hand in hand. Next is you need to have some way to transform energy. Without energy, you're not going to survive very long. Okay, you're going to need energy in order to do things and in order to get more energy. And so energy transformation is super, super, super important. We're going to talk about two major ones throughout the entire year. It does not go away, and you will definitely see it in biology in the future. But it's going to be photosynthesis, is what plants use to get the sun's energy to make energy for themselves. And then cellular respiration is what organisms will use to transfer energy from a stored state to energy that you can actually use to run around and do stuff with. All right, so you need energy. All right, energy transformation is going to be our fourth thing. Response to stimuli. We're actually going to learn about this on Thursday as well. But response to stimuli basically is you take outside information from the world and you're going to react to it. You're going to respond to that stimuli. Stimuli is just outside information. And so when you respond to it, you're going to make a decision. Or in the case of when you don't even think, you just react, you have a reflex, okay, you act without thinking. That's still a reaction to a stimulus, but it's not conscious, okay? It's an unconscious decision. So like if you've ever put your hand on something very, very hot, like a stove, and you didn't know it was on, okay, you quickly pull that off because you feel that heat and your body reacts. It has a reflex, natural reflex to protect itself. Okay, whereas if I were to throw a ball at you, okay, or a pencil or a water bottle, okay, you're going to have to react, see that something's coming toward you, understand what that means and what you need to do, whether it be get out of the way or catch it. Okay, and so that's going to be response to stimuli. We're going to have an entire lab on this involving worms. So it'll be really cool to see what the worms do in response to certain things. Stimuli like light, stimuli like water, and stuff like that. All right. And so just explaining that this slide talks about all living things respond and adapt to changes in their environment to maintain homeostasis. That's a word we're going to come back to. Homeostasis is just talking about homeo means to stay the same, and then stasis is like not moving. And so that refers to over time. So stay the same over time. And so what we want to do is maintain homeostasis because we maintain a healthy state over time. Okay, and that's the goal of the body. So that means if we get too hot, we're going to sweat. Okay, if we get too cold, we're going to shiver. These are all reactions to a stimulus that we get. All right. So let's keep on going. We got our last one, grow and develop. So living things are going to grow and develop over time. And single cellular organisms are going to reproduce and make colonies and get bigger and bigger, whereas multicellular things maybe start out as an egg and then hatch into a caterpillar, go through the phase of becoming a butterfly. So there's a lot of changes going on. Like think about you guys. Think about yourself when you're in elementary school, when you're a first grader. Think about your cognitive ability, how you've improved, how many new things you can do. All right, you guys are really becoming adults now. You're starting to think for yourself. Okay, so you are growing not only physically but also mentally. Your brain is growing. So it's a pretty exciting time. So I want you to take a second to think about, all right, what are the 7 characteristics of life? What did we talk about? All right, that first one, let's just go all the way back and scroll through them one more time. I'll move myself over here. But here we go. Characteristics of life. The first one we talked about was cells. Everything's got to have a cell. Then we had you got to have DNA within that cell so that you can tell the cell what to do exactly and what the cell should act like. All right. Then the cell needs to be able to reproduce. So there's our 3. Okay. Then we have energy transformations because that cell needs energy, right? And so they need to produce it for themselves, or they need to get it somehow. All right. And then have a way to break it down and use it. Then we are going to respond to stimuli so we don't get ourselves into trouble. We don't wind up touching stoves. And if we didn't have nerves in our hands to help us understand that something's hot or cold, then we wouldn't be able to react, okay, and keep ourselves safe. Okay. Then we also need to be able to grow and develop. So I guess I was a little bit off. It's only 6. If you can think of what you think should be a 7th characteristic of life, please bring it up. or put it in the comments. Maybe that'll be my little bonus question for you guys on the quiz that you'll take today as well. So, hey, you guys have a great day, and I'll see you later. Peace.